G'day and welcome to Inforunners. I'm executed. I was not ready for that at all. That was distracting as shit. As from Astropub and Algrid, that threw me. Right? Okay. Right. Yeah. I am not dressed for the occasion. Clearly. Yeah. That threw me. All right.
Hey, say, Polly, are we going on a hunt later?
Oh, we're going on a hunt for sure. I like it when they run.
That's sick and twisted. Right.
That was the title of this episode.
Yes.
I'm just going to say that.
Yes, it is. So this episode kind of came about because I kind of had a bit of a realization on the live stream, which is probably just me. Other people might have had this, but just how kind of simple but complex that industry through animals is. I never really even accumulated them with farming. I didn't accumulate them with like hunting and turning them into science and stuff, or hunting and like butchering them and turning them into different products for the game. And I just had all this realizations that there's this whole other industry there on the side. And unlike, say, something like mining or mining gas or refining or anything like that, it actually really hits a lot of the other things. And I'm going to be honest, it'll even hit them. Combining different materials with different materials from animals is going to be a thing too that I only just thought of just that second. But yeah, I and you kind of look at what they're doing at the moment with the homesteads and stuff like that, and you realize very quickly just how big a thing it is. And I didn't actually think that it'd be that complex, but man, I am being literally schooled, well, at least in my own head, and I'm probably going to get schooled by these two very shortly, on just how, what's the word? I didn't take that in.
Fundamentally important or intrinsic?
No, kind of my own arrogance is another way to look at it. I just didn't really think of it. Like, I was just like, animals, like, yeah. And I even said before the show, like, I don't want to put fauna in the title because I see the word fauna and I just go,
just like,
yeah. Like, to me, I was just like, so uninteresting, it's not funny. But the other interesting thing that I realized when I was on the live stream was because it's a space game, they can make it as alien as they want, and it fits. So like the one Algrid brought up about the ranching with the space cows. They're like literally a cross between a chicken and a cow. Like that, they are almost an ambidextrous thing, and they can make really elaborate, deadly animals that are unlike on Earth, and the one I thought of was like the rhino is the closest thing that we would have to what I'm trying to discovering. But imagine if that arboreal stalker, that really big yeti thing, had a horn, and you cut the horn off and it grows back. But you wouldn't actually want to kill the creature, but you'd want to neutralize it. So the depth of gameplay that just started popping up in my head, left, right, and center, was just insane. So now I've had my rant, I would like to hear what you guys, have you guys always thought this, or am I just really slow on the uptake?
Do you want to start this, Al?
I'd always thought animals were important, but I think there were elements that, even as we were talking yesterday, made me go, ooh. And it was, as we were talking about the wrecks and the settlements around the wrecks. You wreck your ship. Yeah, you may still have a working medical bed, but if you've got no power, that medical bed's not going to work. Or you may have a kitchen, but if you don't have the power for the kitchen or the food stocks, it's irrelevant. So animals become really important for generating just transport for your settlers on a planet, especially the further you go away from the main trade lanes and the main supply routes. You're not going to be wanting to just use your power source all the time. You're going to be wanting to use other sources of power or means to get things done. So you wouldn't always just hop onto your speeder and take it for a joy flight just because, power's going to run out. I need that power for powering X, Y, and Z down the track. So having the animals becomes really important for those aspects as well as it's a bit like the windmills, put up a windmill, but also having the animals to do the carting and hauling. So I had a bit of that. Oh wow, as well.
You just made
not to mention also the byproducts, like the settlers in the United States would often use cow dung or buffalo dung as a fire source, because what do cattle and bison eat? Mostly grass. So their poo is mostly grass. So it's very dry and very brittle and easy to get started. So you could use a lot of that as resources to help you start your fire. So if you wanted to burn that for electricity, you could work. So I could even see like a Kazi grazer waste being used as a way of generating electricity or other means like that, especially because that ties into the game that we'll be seeing with 4.0 or 3.18 and 4.0 and going beyond, which is resource management. Resource management is going to be a huge deal, and these wildlife, these animals will come into play when it comes to a lot of the things.
And being alien, you can kind of like, they can go, we need this type of resource. And they can almost make a creature to fit that resource, you know what I mean? Which is I think it's a great gap filler.
I think we actually made a joke about it, but it was in the version of the Lore Citizen that didn't make it, the last Lore Citizen. But what are the internals of the predator, the invasive species that runs all throughout Hurston? They make hydrogen gas.
Oh yeah,
that is their resource. That is how they float. Is that they take in oxygen and turn it into hydrogen gas.
And poorer people on Hurston do actually eat the meat.
So not only are they meat, but if you could figure out how to extract the hydrogen gas from them, you could turn that into hydrogen fuel. So you'd have
a couple stored on your ship.
effectively a refinery right there, if you actually wanted to go that way, because they already have it built into their lore. And it would make sense that some enterprising, because they're basically rats everywhere.
I don't know if you have them here in the States, but Agrid knows what a fill and go is. That's a really bizarre fill and go, if you know what I'm talking about, Agrid. That you bring in your gas bottle, and basically you leave your empty one and you take the full one. But I'm thinking it's like you leave your empty little creature and take the full one.
Take the full one? Yeah.
Yeah. But they also eat, if I remember right, they eat pretty much anything.
Anything.
They eat waste.
Garbage, waste, anything.
So, which is why they flourish on Hurston. But as we were talking just before the show, I even said, I realised that Hurston are missing a great opportunity. They should be just because of the savannah. They should be doing quasi-grazer farming left, right, and centre. And with the growth that we talked about ArcCorp having in our Lore Citizen, and I think it was the Lore Citizen, we were talking about the size of the population on ArcCorp and in the system of Stanton. That could actually become a really important, viable, cheap source of food for that system. Because if you don't have to go for a jump point to bring the food in, that's going to be cheaper. So you can actually make massive profit just by undercutting the jump point travel. So,
yeah, and you also can imagine. Well, to take it back to the gameplay stuff, one of the things CIG said very early on was they want to do crafting and some sort of crafting system, and they've even mentioned that one of the major ways they're going to do a crafting system is components, is lootables and harvestables, where you can find like plants. So there'll be elements of animals that will also be used for things like illegal drug manufacturing, legal drug manufacturing, manufacturing in general, food production.
Well, even if you look at the wreck outposts, and you look at they've got their windmills going, and I'm pretty certain on some of them, not all the windmill sails are made of metal. Some of them I think one of them was actually cloth or leather or something, and you could actually see the figure on the other side of a cloth.
That's a good point, Agrid. Clothing as well.
Where did that ruined place get all that cloth from?
I can now see some dude that's wearing like the Boreal Stalker's like head as like a wolf helmet or whatever. That will be a thing. You run into some whaler dude and he's wearing parts of the whale as clothing or whatever.
It makes sense of the that bandit helmet. The one that's got the horn and the ox head type helm. The one that we put Rudolph on for Christmas.
I'm actually thinking from a development standpoint, I've just been sitting here and going, there might be some negatives to this, and I've just kind of came onto a couple. Like, plants, essentially, very little animation required. They kind of sit there, they don't move. An animal has a much more complicated animation structure, especially if it's like, you know, a spider or something that's really alien. You know, what if it climbs walls, things like that. And then the other part of it is also the AI. It actually, like, plants don't require an AI. They're not going anywhere, you know.
Yeah.
But like how that creature moves, and you know, you get a grazer and it's just like sitting there eating grass. And but if you've got a creature that's like what? Oh. Sorry, cat turned
I was
up.
going to say,
yeah.
I was going to say you have an animal of your own that's wandering around. We're adding a little bit extra flavor to this animal episode.
Yeah,
right, they are.
So you know, you think about the AI of how a creature behaves. Unlike every plant that's really just a different texture and a different look, you've got that, but you've also got how it behaves is drastically different. And even if you take two predators, like the way they may act is different. One might be hyper aggressive, one might be very calculated and choosing. So the funny, interesting thing with that is, I wonder how much their personalities are going to come into effect. Stop it, you. I'll pat you. Stop. You stop.
It's just telling that, you know, we've got to have the animals on an animal show. So
Yes, we gotta have the guest star. We gotta ask your cat about about their opinions on having animals in Star Citizen.
well, I think the interesting thing is, what does the cat think about flat cats?
Oh, that's a good question too. Yeah,
She's just being a sookie bum. I'm gonna be honest. I probably should have fed her by now, but with today's schedule, I've been a bit busy. So we'll feed her promptly after the show. But you get what I'm trying to say. Like, there actually is a bit more development work in these creatures, especially the ones that we're going to interact with like that. Like, yeah, I would say most of them are going to be just grazers and, you know, kind of walking around as background scenery and stuff like that. The other thing I started to think of was that someone brought up in the live stream was the like moving in herds and stuff like that as well. That, like, can you imagine a spaceship and you're flying over like a really picturesque location, almost like, you know, you see in Africa with the helicopters, and there's a whole fleet of gazelle or zebras or something, and they're all moving in herds and stuff like that. That will just, you know, the icing on the cake type of thing, and things like that. So there's actually a lot of moving parts that I just didn't even think of.
Yeah, but I could see even the wild animals doing that, but I could see, you know, farmers or ranchers having that type. I think of the Australian ranchers, you know, with the helicopters rounding up their cattle and all the horses or whatever. And I could see that being a fitting perfectly with Thurston, mainly because it just looks like Australia.
Yeah.
So I could see that as being a really key thing that players could get into. You could, you know, you stake your land. You don't necessarily even have to have, you know, people say, oh, you've staked some land but doesn't have minables. Well, as long as you've got a water resource, you've now got that useless unmined land becomes grazing land for you know, so land doesn't become just useless because it doesn't have minables. It becomes useful because it's got support for farming or grazing or other stuff. So
I've got the worst visual in my head. For some reason, as you were talking, Aragrid, I saw you as the vulture, if you know from the Spider-Man series, and then I somehow cross-referenced that with an emu. So I've now got like an Aragrid-looking emu in my head that I can't get out of my head, and there's a whole herd of them, and they're all and they're all being like herded like cattle. Anyway,
that means that I won't lose any wars. That's great.
So yeah, we haven't even got into like the ease of things, right? So for example, anytime they have something that they need to fill a gap, right? So they need a new material or something like that. And I guess you, like, the way I looked at it is you could technically make a new rock for mining, or you can make a new liquid or gas. I think the easiest one is going to be a plant. Now I've really sat here and thought about it. But you can also do the same thing with an animal. Anytime they need something to fill a gap in a story or change something up, something's discovered, you know, and then they, you know, it goes into that farming mechanic. It also showed me how big farming is going to be, so let's talk about that in a bit. But you can breed out, you know, said plant or said animal and send it out across the galaxy. You know, and all the ships that come with that as well. So, you know, let's look at plant and animals. You're going to need to have ships that actually can mimic an ecosystem, much like the biodomes, right? But the same thing when it's with animals. Do you think the biodomes on the Endeavour are going to do animals as well? Like, or do you think that's a completely different ship? I guess is what I'm asking.
I think it's both, but I think you can almost certainly can guarantee that there's going to be animals in the biodomes, just because if they can grow food, you can have animals herding in those exact same places. So,
yeah. Well, the way I
expect to see it,
put it to our grid is that's literally the first module that has a module.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would see it as you can, and you'd expect. I suppose it's a bit like the whole argument with exploration. Can the Carrack is an explorer, but can you go exploring in an Argo? Yeah. Can you go exploring in an Aurora? Yeah. Is it as good as a Carrack? No. And it'd be the same for the biodomes. Could you have animals in that biodome that's more configured for plants? Yeah. Is it going to be as good as one that's configured for animals? No. But
the other way I looked at it too, Algrid, is like how you have like when you're milking cows at the moment in real life, they're pushed off to that farming facility. But what if you actually had a ship that did that, and you do it with wild animals? So you just herd them all up, farm the materials out of them, so to speak. And I don't mean kill them, I mean just like process them and then let them go. And then over time they regenerate. So someone else comes along and grabs them, because maybe they can't be done in captivity. They have to be done in the wild because there's something that they gather or something like that, that's in the environment that you just can't get out of farming, or it's an unknown. They don't know, There's so many story connotations and gameplay connotations there. And that's what I mean about the alienness of it. You can make up reasons for why it can't be done certain ways and stuff like that. And the variety there is very deep and complex. So you can have ones that you have that are like at a housing establishment, or they have to be done on a ship, or even a combination of both. Like one area is done one, you can see where I'm going at. Like they can literally make reasons for ships to exist through animals.
Or you have a situation like the Stormwall, which they've said will have harvestables on the surface of a Stormwall, and you'd go to the Stormwall, you'd land on it, and then you harvest them, and you've got to get off before it decides to dive into the depths of Crusader. So CIG have already flagged that type of gameplay as being there. So how far are they going to go with it is, I suppose, the question.
Yeah, I've just got this really weird visual of people trying to shave the Abiral Stalker. well, it's trying to rip their face off. But you get what we're trying to say. Like if you kind of start to think through animals of the real world and how we use animals in everyday life, you can actually relate that back to gameplay quite heavily. And farming is going to be way bigger than I thought it was going to be. It actually kind of, I'm surprised in a weird way that we don't have a farming concept ship. And as the title of this video kind of suggests, that is why what really hit me is just how big of a profession it is. It almost mirrors almost all of the other industry combined, because it goes into cooking, it goes into bounty hunting, it goes in you might have I wrote down here, Agard, when you were talking earlier, if you crash on a planet, it might not be you starve to death. It might be you're literally under attack, but also you have to go out and maybe kill animals to survive. So you might somehow go to some primitive tool thing where they might have a mechanic where you can make a bow and arrow out of a tree or something. I don't know, because that's pretty complex and it's obviously really far down the road. But even then, if you've got a real basic pistol, that how are you going to get out there and survive until help arrives? And you work it through. It's going to be nature that's out there, somehow collecting resources, but by hand. You think of all those survival games like Ark and a few others like that. You can see that with the way the food system is, it's almost a no-brainer. And that becomes a part of the survival mechanic while you're out and about. I don't know. What do you guys think of that? It does seem so far down the line. I do acknowledge that, but I do think it will be a thing. Yeah.
And I agree. but I definitely want to like put something, because whenever something like this is mentioned, there's always someone in the comments who's like, I don't want Star Citizen to have any survival mechanics, and I don't want to have to slash two sticks together to build an AK-47. And the answer is that's not what CIG is going to do with any of this. When we're talking about these sorts of things, we're talking about the difference between, say, survival mechanic and, say, getting materials for an upgrade, and then also like consistent building of like industry wide. So there's the thing about it is that it's scalable. You've got the wildlife for survival. You've got, hey, I need boreal stalker fur to be able to put into this type of jacket that I want to make, so that I can, or to improve my jacket so it'll have a higher wind resistance, so I can wear that and, microtech. Let's go find one and take it real quick, because I don't want to have to go buy that thing from a store, to like someone who captures boreal stalkers and puts them in their biodomes and then harvests them for their fur, kind of thing. And that kind of tiers, it can easily swing back and forth.
Yeah,
so it's so far in the future that it's something that CIG probably hasn't even thought about extensively, other than the idea that they could use them for resources.
I was thinking more really light, like what we've got now. So like, how you got to eat every once in a while and drink once every while. But if you're in a crash and you've got no food, if you're in a certain ship that just doesn't have a kitchen, as an example, it may still have a bed, so you can log out in the bed, but you log back in. Everything seems to be moving towards that limited resource mechanic, right? And so, when I run that through,
and we saw that with the mole, the mule. Remember when we're looking at the mule, and there's that fuel cap on the mule that says the mule is going to have limited, vehicles are going to have limited range. You're going to have to top up their tanks or put a new battery pack or whatever it is in there to power them. Resources matter, and where do you get those resources if you're isolated, or where do you get resources if you're on the fringe? You're going to be getting it from the plants or the animals around you, or even the ore around you, but you've got to have the tools to be able to do that. And you might need to generate power, and how do you generate power? Okay, we'll use a windmill. How are we making our windmill? And so you've got, even in those aspects, you've got areas where, okay, we can make a windmill out of our ship. Okay, we could do this. But you can also make windmills. Make the sails out of animal parts, or
So what you're talking about, Agrid, is like basic survival construction, essentially. And as I said, I think that would have come many years from now.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. It would probably be a thing, a way to create a basic power source. A way to create a basic beacon to call for help, that you can salvage components on your ship or parts of your ship to do. And I agree with that. That may be a thing down the line.
So you're not necessarily creating the thing. You're actually using the bits and pieces that you've got available to jury rig a power source to power your, to power the battery or do X, Y, Z. So, it's the opportunities, I think, are wide and far-reaching, and I don't think any of us have really even considered it. I'm pretty certain CIG have kind of got it at the back of their head, and certainly the law team probably have it at the back of their head, because you've got the law of a Devaran not being the key, the prime predator on Calais, and being hunted by these predators, but we don't know what the predator is, and people have asked the law team, and they said, well, we haven't said they're wiped out yet. They could be in pockets on the planet. They could have been taken off world. But what it does is it gives us that opportunity. If the art team decides they need a big nasty predator, we can actually say, yes, it's this thing, and we've got a law background to actually feed into that.
I've even considered things like gambling, where they take two creatures and get them to fight each other, and people bet on it and stuff like that. I could see that as an underground. It's not sport. What do you call it? But you know how you got like the racing on Grimhex and stuff. People would turn up to see animals fight each other, even to the point you could have like one boreal stalker versus 3 whip crabs or whatever. Like just as an arena fight, kind of like the way I'd put it is like what happened in episode 2 of Star Wars. You know how the different creatures fighting each other, the same type of thing, and people make bets on it.
If we've got the type of fighting pits in the prisons, that's humans fighting humans. Why not animal fighting animals? And I know that goes down the whole, that's cruelty to animals, and the whole, dog fights and cockfights and all the rest of it. But
you might even see
there's an element where
it's a video game is the one thing. It's also fictional animals. So but I'll also add that it adds an additional layer to it too. Big game hunting. As a mission for escort VIP, take them on your A600 and take them down out to the plains of Hurston and have them shoot a big game, creature, and that's the mission. It's one of those things you can easily slot into just about any kind of mission parameter. You gotta go into this mine to find the missing guy. Oh, look, there's an entire pod of whip crabs. That you have to clear out before you get there. It makes a nice little easy population to add more flavor to the rest of the universe as well.
It certainly changes the go into a cave to find this guy, and there's Ninetales guy shooting at me.
Also, you could have counter missions to that, like Crusader Greenpeace rocking up trying to tell them off, and stuff like that. So,
I could imagine Crusader Greenpeace patrolling, protecting the whales from people trying to harvest them because for whatever reason.
You actually mentioned VIPs. That's another one. Actually, a part of touring is going and visiting rare flora and fauna, and not just locations. That was something else I just thought of. Like the whale, whale tours is something. So why wouldn't it be touring other animals is a thing? So
and even going on, as Paul said, the big game hunt. Wealthy people like going on those big game hunts, whether it's just to take pictures of them, whether it's to actually hunt them and be able to get the head and stuff it and put it on their wall or whatever. But that is something that wealthy people do like to do. I think I've actually worked out why Old Man Hurston is out of the family's clique though. He wanted to go into agriculture and farming. He saw the food line, and the family is no, we're not doing that.
He's a rancher now. Old Man Hurston's a rancher now. He's following he's becoming Jimmy Dean or what was it? Jimmy Stewart for real.
That's right. He is a Jimmy Stewart, so that's
a question.
That's where he comes from. There you go.
How many animal byproducts can actually turn into almost mining resources as well? Like liquids and gases and solids.
Today we use them all the time. Bones, marrow, lots of things in animal products I end up using is similar to in construction materials. Yeah. So, let alone beauty products and food and like health products like medicines.
I can see the law team have an absolute field day with that. There's some kind of creature that's like endangered or something, but they're trying to grow it, and they're like really just abusing the hell out of it to make this really profitable material or something like that. And they can, really kind of engage your mind with like real world issues and stuff like that. So I'm interested to see where it goes because, again, being alien, you can really stretch the limits. And I'll just say as a side note to kind of relate to that, we were picking the title for this video today, and I just kept realizing I was flagging what would potential flags on YouTube because I wanted to put certain titles in, and I was like, I can't do that because YouTube will...
Well, Paul was going, no, you can't use that. No, you can't use that. No, you can't use YouTube that. And you're going, oh, yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I can't.
And it was just when I realized, like being in a video game, they can actually do that, but not do it to real creatures. It's like you said, Paul. Yeah. It gives them an opportunity to, take some places that feel uncomfortable, but it's not real,
Yeah. In terms of the byproducts, I had a girlfriend many years ago who had an uncle who was an emu farmer.
1929 is so long ago, Algrid. I don't think any of us can relate.
But the emu farmer would use every part of the emu in some form of industry. The skin could be used as leather, the feathers were used in fashion, the eggs were used for food, the shells. Every part of it could be used in industry.
It's very similar.
There's not a single part of the emu that couldn't be used.
What you're saying there is almost identical to what Drazen said with oil when he was talking about how oil is used. So I have no doubt. I'm almost sitting here wondering now, this is a really weird way to look at it though, but like, how like a harvesting ship. We know that that's a thing with the Van Doel. Is there like a butcher ship? They just go in and they harvest the some like you know they,
a mobile processor, because they call them processor, and they don't really use butchers any term more, because a butcher's like someone who actually kind of carves up the meat.
You know what I mean, though. But you seed a planet, like so those little hydrogen guys you were talking about, they seed a planet or a moon and let them go nuts for X amount of time and just come in and just harvest the hell out of them, you know, and then let them recuperate and then come back, you know, 2 years later and do it again. And this ship just goes from place to place. It'd be kind of sickly, but like we've got slaving ships in game, right? There's got to be something similar to that, but for animals. I'm just saying, like the scope of this is only just now hitting me, and I really feel like I've stumbled on something that I should have discovered so much earlier than I actually have. It just shows my lack of foresight, because I kind of just went animals and went, nah.
To put some hype breaks onto that, though, the issue is like all this stuff is potential. Yes. These all have a lot of potential for them, but really what matters is what CIG wants to do with them. And I think that's the one of the reasons why like CIG's lore team will be very broad in their construction of these animals, and what they have and what they don't do, because they don't want to paint the developers who just say, hey, you know what, the Kazi Grazer, maybe it doesn't poop out methane, maybe it farts cyanide, you know, or some other exotic like thing that they can then use to like, oh, then we can capture that and turn it into industrial solvents or something like that, so that they can solve a problem with what they have. So it's important to note that all of these things are potential, but CIG could also do nothing with them, but they still have that ability to do it if they need to.
Yeah, I think at the moment they've only really talked about plants, but the potential of the scope of animals is quite broad, and I think like looking at what they're doing now, they probably are having a narrower scope, but I think as time goes on and the game goes through many years, I think they will eventually broaden and broaden. But yeah, like as I said, some of the creatures we've seen, most of them apex predators are the ones that we're seeing. So they seem to be using animals as a danger, as a attack mechanic is what I would call it. So like look at the ones. The three I'm thinking of is the one on the Zion homeworld. That's that like giant bat thing. You've got the arboreal stalker and the whip crab.
What is it called? The Santuk. The Santuk guy.
That's the ship. That's a ship, nope. Paul.
I know. It's the same. The ship is named after that creature.
It's basically like, something, really? Fearful fear or something like that, or something.
Yeah,
nasty.
It's like us calling a ship with the hawk or the falcon. Okay. Same enough. Concept.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, Paul's going cynical as hell.
I'm tired. No, it's not called the Santuk Yai. It's like the Santuk or something like that. Is the name of the bird, but it's the Santuk Yai is like the name of the ship. But it's
I think the Yai bit on the Santuk Yai ship is kind of the equivalent of the owl on the Katu owl, and it's we'd have to get Jail in to confirm that, but I think that was one of the things that they've said in the past, because I can remember questions on why isn't the Santokai referred to as the Santokai owl, because owl is that prefix for the human market, and I can remember an argument put forward for it, but So I'm not the Xi'an linguist.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear in the comments from you guys, like, have you actually sat there and thought about animals and all the connotations they could have? I'm going to be honest, I was really arrogant or ignorant is probably the better word, ignorant to what you'd be able to do with animals in game. And the scope is very broad and vast, and I just never sat and thought about it. And now I kind of go, well, there's a whole nother side to this game. And they, again, as we said, they can scale it to where they want it to go. And I think what I'm trying to get at is there's more potential on that side of it than there is, I think, on other things like mining and gas. But I could be ignorant there as well. So
Star Citizen Sim Farmer, Star Citizen Sim Miner, Star Citizen Sim. Yeah,
there's a whole thing there, and I do think they are going to like pull on other games to do things. So Ark. They will look into things like SimCity and the Sim games, even things like with refineries and processing ships. I'm expecting them to do games like Satisfactory. So they can look out there and see the appeal of other games and it becomes this multifaceted game that just is so appealing to so many different people. What would you guys like to hear from people in the comments below?
Paul?
I'd like to hear what their favorite version of this whole thing is. Like, what do you want to see in terms of participate in? Do you want to go be a big game hunter? Do you want to be a farmer? Do you want to like farm into like industrial farming, survival, whatever? Like what is your preferred way to interact with the animals of Star Citizen in the future?
I think that's apart from pets, because I think most people want pets, and and we know CIG have got pets on the horizon, and we know there are at least 2 invasive species in the verse. We know there are the flow pets, which were friendly little organisms, is where the flow comes from, and they came from Z, and they basically were originally a protected species. People smuggled them off; they just flourished, and when we couldn't care for them, people literally just tossed them down the toilet, and they flourish in the sewer systems of human settlements. So they've gone everywhere, I imagine. So you've got those, and then you've got the Oni crabs.
I'd also like to know how much you think Algrid should charge for Old Man Hurston's bald emu farm on Hurston. And where should he locate it? Like what part of the planet should be located on? I think that would be an interesting thing to hear.
Old Man Al Hurston, environmentalist, because if they damage the planet too much,
see that drops. So even there, like I just see that as so interesting. I'm going on a tangent again, but like political reasons for them to stop stuffing up the planet, because like it's actually actively hurting the agriculture of the planet, and there's this booming industry on Hurston of like farming, and they're killing it because Hurston, the company, just doesn't care because they own the planet. Like there's a really cool story dynamic there, and you could see all the flare-ups that happen, and all of a sudden there's some kind of, the workers you talk about, the workers somehow join with the environmentalists, and you can see where the story goes.
You mean the uwu workers?
The uwu. The cat
girl workers, yes.
The cat girl revolutionaries.
Union. Yeah. The uwu workers have been shattered. They've been
So you can see, like I think there's a lot of potential here, and I think people relate more to animals than they do to resources like rocks and gas and stuff like that. So I think there is a really interesting place that this could go. My camera is hating me today. All right.
Yep. Just to quickly tap into the ranching, that also raises a criminal activity. Rustling cattle.
That's true. Poaching.
So you and poaching. You've got endangered species. You're poaching, and we know that's something that goes on as well, because flow pets originally started from people poaching off the planet in-law, and so the Fair Chance Act really does screw things up at times, but
as I'm saying, I just think it just helps with the depth. So, all right, unless you guys have got anything else you want to add, we'll wrap it up. All right. Well, he's been Astropub. He's been Algrid. Oh yeah, and
he's been Execute.
But we meant to do the whole subscribe, like, and thing. That's how tired I am. Yeah, sorry.
If you enjoyed this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because it means a lot to us that you come join us on this adventure. It's not just myself or Execute and Algrid. We bring other people on from all over the Star Citizen universe to talk about every single aspect of Star Citizen, from ships to gameplay to speculation to current news, everything. So we'd love to see you come join us on a weekly basis. Try to get a video out every week for your consumption. And on top of that, if you would like that video, it will spread the word to all over YouTube. It'll tell our Lord and Masters at YouTube that we are worthy of Star Citizen content, and it'll tell other people who enjoy Star Citizen content to watch it. So if you really enjoyed what we do and you want to help spread the word, liking is as simple as that. But if you want to go that extra mile, you can comment down below. Let us know what your thoughts. And if you want to go even further, we do have a Patreon that you can join for what is it? The lowest is $1 a month.
$1.
Lowest, as low as $1 a month, to get some perks, to get some other benefits, and get a little like icon and other things like that in the chat, so people know that you're special and stuff like that. So if you want to do any of that, please do. And like always, make sure you come back. Hope to see you real soon.
And we do read every single comment. We may not answer them all, but we do read every single comment. So we'd love to hear from you.
He's been Algrid. He's been Astropub. I almost called
And
you. I almost called you Execute Algrid. That's how tight I was.
That's how tired you are.
All right, we're out of here.